9 Stoic lessons to not give people a second chance. Have you ever wondered if giving second chances aligns with the principles of Stoicism? Welcome to our journey into the heart of the ancient philosophy of Stoicism, a philosophy that has guided some of the most influential figures in history, from the great emperor Marcus Aurelius to modern figures such as Tim Ferriss and Ryan Holiday. Our exploration today takes us to a question that seems to resonate deeply in our modern lives. Should we, as followers of Stoicism, give people a second chance? It's a question that speaks to our relationships, our interactions, and our views on human nature. To delve into this intriguing question, we will be drawing on the wisdom of the world's greatest Stoic philosophers, whose teachings continue to reverberate through the centuries. We will be looking at 9 key Stoic lessons, each offering a unique perspective on the idea of second chances. We'll start by examining the Stoic emphasis on the acceptance of reality, a concept that encourages us to see the world as it truly is, not as we wish it to be. Then, we'll explore the idea of the impermanence of all things, a reminder of the fleeting nature of life and the transient nature of our relationships. From there, we'll delve into the Stoic view of virtue as the highest good, a principle that may offer surprising insights into the question of second chances. We'll also consider the Stoic lessons on the wise use of resources, emotional resilience, and the supremacy of reason over passion. In the latter part of our journey, we'll reflect on the Stoic practices of the view from above, a technique for gaining perspective, and the dichotomy of control, a tool for focusing our energies where they matter most. Finally, we'll close with the Stoic discipline of Assent, a lesson on the power of our judgments and perceptions. So strap in and get ready for a journey into the heart of Stoicism and the wisdom of the ancients. This isn't just about philosophy, it's about life, relationships, and the choices we make. Let's dive into the wisdom of the ancient Stoic philosophers and explore this fascinating question. The first Stoic lesson revolves around acceptance of reality. In the realm of Stoicism, an ancient Greek philosophy, we encounter the concept of accepting reality as it stands before us. This idea, simple at its core, is a potent antidote to the human tendency to resist, deny, or distort the truths of our existence. Consider the concept of control. Much of human suffering stems from our desperate attempts to control elements outside of our reach. However, Stoicism teaches us to focus on what lies within our power, while learning to accept the things we cannot change. It's a lesson about discerning between what's within our control and what's not. Now let's relate this to the idea of second chances. Imagine a friend has betrayed your trust. You might be tempted to give them a second chance, hoping they will change. But here, Stoicism would advise caution. It would remind us to accept the reality of their actions. It would suggest that while we can control our response, we cannot control their behavior. In this scenario, the Stoic lesson of acceptance is a powerful tool for managing our expectations and safeguarding our well-being. But what does acceptance really mean? Does it imply passivity or surrender? Not at all. Stoic acceptance is not about resignation, but about understanding the nature of things. It's about acknowledging the reality without letting it disturb our inner peace. It's about releasing the futile struggle against the unchangeable and investing our energy where it truly counts. By embracing this Stoic lesson, we can foster resilience, cultivate peace, and maintain a clear perspective no matter what life throws our way. We can learn to navigate the tumultuous seas of life, not by attempting to calm the storm, but by learning to sail our ship. Acceptance, in the Stoic sense, is a powerful strategy for life. It empowers us to live more fully, more wisely, and with a greater sense of peace. It helps us to see things as they are, not as we wish them to be. In Stoicism, we learn to accept reality and adjust our expectations accordingly. The second lesson deals with the impermanence of all things. In the grand tapestry of existence, change is the only constant. The ancient Stoics understood this truth well, and it played a significant role in their philosophy. Everything in our world, from the mightiest mountain to the fleeting emotions that flutter through our minds, is subject to change and ultimately, impermanence. This concept of impermanence isn't just an abstract philosophical idea. It's a practical tool that can dramatically influence our choices and actions, particularly when it comes to the notion of giving second chances. If we truly grasp the impermanence of all things, we can view our relationships and interactions through a different lens. Consider a relationship that has caused you pain or discomfort. Perhaps a friend betrayed your trust, or a business partner let you down. In the heat of the moment, it can be tempting to close the door on that relationship, to deny any possibility of a second chance. However, the Stoic understanding of impermanence provides a different perspective. The person who wronged you is just as subject to the forces of change as anything else. They are not static, but evolving, shaped by experiences and time. The version of them that hurt you might not be the version you encounter in the future. This doesn't mean we should blindly offer second chances. Instead, it's about making informed decisions. By acknowledging impermanence, we can assess whether a person's change is genuine or merely a temporary shift. We can weigh the potential benefits of granting a second chance against the potential risks. It's also crucial to remember that our own selves are impermanent. We too change and grow, learning from our past mistakes and experiences. The person who was hurt in the past is not the same as the one deciding on a second chance. Impermanence also reminds us that our time is limited. Every moment we spend holding on to past grievances is a moment lost. By embracing change, we can let go of past hurts and open ourselves up to new possibilities. By acknowledging impermanence, we can make more informed decisions about second chances. The third Stoic lesson emphasizes virtue as the highest good. This fundamental principle of Stoicism underscores the importance of moral character and ethical behavior above all else. In the grand tapestry of Stoicism, virtue is not simply a concept. It's the cornerstone, the very essence of a well-lived and meaningful life. It's the pursuit of moral excellence, the embodiment of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. It's in the choices we make, the actions we undertake, and the attitudes we harbor. But how does this translate into our understanding of second chances? Well, to engage with this question, we must first delve deeper into the Stoic perception of virtue. For the Stoics, virtue is not a one-time act. It's a habit, a consistent pattern of behavior. It is not about perfection, but about striving to be better, to act rightly, and to respond wisely to the challenges life throws at us. Now let's contemplate the concept of second chances through the lens of virtue. Stoicism doesn't outright reject the idea of second chances. However, it does urge us to be discerning and prudent. If someone has wronged us and we are considering whether to give them a second chance, the Stoics would advise us to weigh our decision against the scale of virtue. Is it just to give this person another opportunity? Are we acting with courage, not out of fear or desperation, but from a place of strength and wisdom? Are we exercising temperance, not rushing into a decision impulsively, but taking the time to reflect and evaluate? Remember, in Stoicism, second chances are not about the person who has wronged us. They are about us, about our character, about our commitment to virtue. They are about whether we can maintain our moral compass, even when we are hurt, even when we are betrayed. In conclusion, virtue, in the Stoic sense, is not just about doing good. It's about being good, consistently and persistently. It's about making decisions that reflect our commitment to moral excellence, even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. In Stoicism, virtue should guide our decision-making, including whether to give second chances. The fourth Stoic lesson involves the wise use of resources. In the realm of Stoicism, resources aren't just the tangible things we can touch or see. They also include our time, our energy, and perhaps most importantly, our trust. It's this broad interpretation of resources that gives Stoicism its timeless relevance. Stoic philosophers such as Seneca and Epictetus often emphasize that our time, like our lives, is finite. Each moment, once gone, can never be recovered. This perspective teaches us that the way we choose to spend our time is of profound importance. It's not just about being productive or busy, but about investing our time in ways that align with our values and contribute to our growth and happiness. Similarly, our energy is a limited resource that must be spent wisely. Stoicism teaches us to focus our energy on those things within our control and let go of those that are not. It's about understanding that while we can't control the actions of others, we can control how we respond, how much energy we give to their actions, and whether we allow their actions to drain us. And then there's trust, perhaps the most delicate of all resources. In the context of deciding whether to give someone a second chance, the Stoics would advise us to consider carefully. Trust, once broken, is not easily repaired. It requires time and consistent effort to rebuild. Stoicism teaches us that while forgiveness is a virtue, it doesn't necessarily mean we should freely give second chances. In essence, Stoicism encourages us to be judicious with our resources. It reminds us that every investment, whether it's our time, energy, or trust, comes with a cost. It cautions us to consider the potential return on these investments before we make them. So, when faced with the decision to give a second chance, remember this Stoic lesson. Consider the investment it requires and weigh it against the potential return. Stoicism reminds us to consider carefully before investing our resources, including when deciding to give a second chance. The fifth Stoic lesson centers around emotional resilience. This pillar of Stoicism calls us to build inner strength, to endure life's storms with a calm and steady mind. It's about understanding that emotions are not our enemies, but rather they are responses to the world around us. They are signals, not dictators. Stoicism, contrary to popular belief, doesn't advocate for the absence of emotions, but rather it encourages us to regulate our emotional responses. It's not about being emotionless, but about being less at the mercy of our emotions. In the face of adversity, the Stoics tell us to remain calm, composed, and collected. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Now let's consider how emotional resilience influences our decision to give second chances. We've all been in situations where we've been wronged or hurt by others. In these moments, our emotions can run high, clouding our judgment and leading us to make hasty decisions. But the Stoics advise us to take a step back, to not let our emotions dictate our actions. They encourage us to practice patience, understanding, and forgiveness. Emotional resilience, in the context of second chances, is about understanding that people can change. It's about recognizing our own capacity for growth and extending that same belief to others. It's about letting go of past hurts and opening ourselves up to the possibility of reconciliation and repair. But it's also about setting boundaries and protecting our own well-being. It's about knowing when to say no, when to walk away. The Stoics remind us that we have a duty to ourselves, to our own peace and happiness. In conclusion, emotional resilience is not just about weathering the storm, but about learning how to dance in the rain. It's about finding balance, about navigating the complexities of life with grace and wisdom. And when it comes to second chances, it's about making decisions that align with our values, that respect our self-worth, and that contribute to our overall well-being. In Stoicism, emotional resilience can help us navigate the complexities of second chances. The sixth Stoic lesson prioritizes reason over passion. And with this principle, we dive into the heart of Stoicism, where logic and rationality reign supreme. The Stoics believed that our ability to reason is what sets us apart, what makes us human. They saw passion, on the other hand, as a disruptor, a force that can cloud judgment and lead us astray. Now, this isn't to say that Stoics were devoid of emotions or passions. Quite the contrary, they merely suggested we should not be ruled by them. Let's consider a scenario. Say you're deciding whether to give someone a second chance. It's easy to be swayed by emotions, by the passion of the moment. You might feel a surge of sympathy, or perhaps a tinge of guilt. But the Stoics would advise you to step back, to look at the situation objectively, to use your reason. Ask yourself, why does this person deserve a second chance? Have they shown genuine remorse? Have they made tangible changes in their behavior? Are they likely to repeat their mistake? These are rational questions that can guide your decision rather than the tumultuous sea of emotions. The Stoics would argue that it's not about being cold or unfeeling. It's about making informed decisions. It's about not letting our passions dictate our actions, but rather using them as tools, as advisors, not dictators. The ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Passions stem from involuntary beliefs, and sorrows from the belief that what is involuntary is necessary." In other words, we have the power to control our reactions, our emotions. We have the power to choose reason over passion. And so, when it comes to second chances, the Stoics would urge us to be thoughtful, to be rational, to weigh the pros and cons, to consider the possible outcomes, and then make a decision based on reason, not on fleeting emotions. Stoicism teaches us to use reason as our guide, especially when considering second chances. And in doing so, we can navigate the complexities of life with a clearer mind, a calm heart, and a steady hand. The seventh Stoic lesson introduces the view from above. This concept invites us to step back, rise above the immediate and the personal, to see the broader context of our lives and the world around us. Imagine yourself soaring high above your present circumstances. From this elevated vantage point, you begin to see things differently. The minor irritations and daily worries that once consumed you now seem trivial. The slights and mistakes of others, including those who may have wronged you, take on a new perspective. From up here, the whole world is in view. You see the interconnectedness of all things. You see that every action, every decision, every person plays a part in the grand tapestry of existence. This understanding brings with it a sense of humility. It reminds us of our place in the universe and the transient nature of our lives. So when we consider giving someone a second chance, the view from above can provide clarity. It helps us to see beyond the immediate hurt or disappointment. It encourages us to consider the bigger picture, the potential for growth, for change, for reconciliation. However, this doesn't mean we should always give second chances. The view from above doesn't diminish the importance of personal boundaries or the need for accountability. Instead, it helps us to make more informed, balanced decisions. It allows us to weigh the potential benefits of forgiveness against the potential costs. In the grand scheme of things, our time is fleeting. Every moment spent harboring resentment or nursing a grudge is a moment lost. The view from above reminds us of this. It encourages us to use our time and energy wisely, to focus on what truly matters. With this perspective, we can approach second chances not from a place of emotional reactivity, but from a place of thoughtful consideration. We can decide whether to forgive based on a clear understanding of the situation, rather than being swayed by immediate emotions. With the view from above, Stoicism encourages us to see the bigger picture in all situations, including when considering second chances. This perspective can lead to deeper understanding, greater compassion, and more thoughtful decision-making. It's a view worth taking. The eighth Stoic lesson presents the dichotomy of control. This principle, foundational to Stoic philosophy, invites us to discern the aspects of life we can influence and those we cannot. In the grand tapestry of existence, there are threads we can manipulate and others that remain forever out of our reach. Stoics advise us to focus our efforts on the former, accepting the latter as immutable realities. Imagine a chessboard. You control your pieces, strategizing your moves, but you cannot dictate your opponent's actions. This is the dichotomy of control. Your pieces, your moves, are within your control. Your opponents, however, are not. Applying this to our lives, we can control our actions, responses, and attitudes, but not the behavior or thoughts of others. Understanding this dichotomy can profoundly influence our decisions about second chances. When we give someone a second chance, we often hope for a change in their behavior. However, we must remember, we cannot control the actions of others. The decision to change lies within their realm of control, not ours. If we base our decision to give a second chance on the hope of change in another, we set ourselves up for potential disappointment. We're attempting to control the uncontrollable. Instead, we should base our decisions on what we can control. Can we handle the consequences if the person doesn't change? Are we capable of maintaining our tranquility regardless of their actions? If we can answer yes to these questions, then we're making a decision based on our realm of control. The dichotomy of control doesn't discourage us from giving second chances. Rather, it encourages us to make wise decisions, grounded in an understanding of what we can influence and what we cannot. Ultimately, The dichotomy of control is a tool for maintaining our serenity in the face of life's unpredictability. It guides us in our relationships, helping us to make decisions that protect our peace and well-being. Understanding the dichotomy of control can guide us in making decisions about second chances. It reminds us that while we cannot control the actions of others, we can always control our responses, our decisions, and our attitudes. The ninth and final Stoic lesson is the discipline of assent. This principle refers to the Stoic practice of accepting reality as it is, without distortion or denial. It's about giving our assent, our agreement, to the facts of life, no matter how they may appear to us at first glance. No illusions, no wishful thinking, just the raw, unvarnished truth. The discipline of assent teaches us that our perceptions and judgments are often the source of our distress, not the events themselves. It encourages us to question our initial reactions and to examine them rationally before we decide to accept or reject them. Now let's consider how this might play out when it comes to the question of giving someone a second chance. When someone has let us down or hurt us, our immediate reaction might be to close the door on them forever. But the discipline of assent invites us to pause and reflect. It urges us to look at the situation objectively, to consider all the facts, and to separate our emotional response from the actual events. Perhaps the person made a genuine mistake. Perhaps they were acting out of ignorance or fear. Perhaps they've shown remorse and a willingness to change. Or perhaps not. The point is, we won't know unless we take the time to assess the situation honestly and rationally. The discipline of assent doesn't necessarily mean we should always give a second chance, but it does mean that we should make that decision consciously, based on a clear-eyed view of the facts, rather than on raw emotion or preconceived notions. In the end, the discipline of assent is about freedom. It's about freeing ourselves from the tyranny of our unexamined thoughts and reactions. It's about choosing to respond to life with wisdom and integrity, rather than being swept along by the tides of emotion or circumstance. The discipline of assent reminds us to accept things as they are, even when faced with the decision of giving a second chance. So, what does Stoicism teach us about second chances? Let's take a moment to reflect on the teachings we've navigated through today. We've journeyed through 9 lessons from the school of Stoicism, each one providing us with a unique perspective on the concept of second chances. Beginning with the acceptance of reality, Stoicism teaches us to see the world as it is, not as we'd like it to be. It reminds us to be mindful of our expectations and to accept that people can and do change, but also that they may not always change in the ways we desire. We've also delved into the impermanence of all things. This understanding can guide us when we're considering whether to give someone a second chance. It encourages us to remember that just as the world around us is constantly changing, so too are people. What was once a negative trait may have evolved over time, and a second chance might just reveal a changed person. The third lesson we explored was the idea of virtue as the highest good. When faced with the decision of giving a second chance, Stoicism encourages us to consider our own virtue. Are we acting with integrity, kindness, and wisdom? Are we being true to our own values? In our fourth lesson, we discussed the wise use of resources. This not only refers to physical resources, but also our emotional energy. Stoicism reminds us to be discerning about where we invest our energy and to consider whether giving a second chance is a wise use of our emotional resources. Our fifth lesson was about emotional resilience. Stoicism teaches us that our emotional responses are within our control. In the context of second chances, it encourages us to respond to disappointments with resilience rather than resentment. The sixth lesson, reason over passion, is particularly relevant when considering second chances. Stoicism advises us to make decisions guided by reason, not by fleeting emotions. It reminds us to consider the long-term consequences of our actions rather than making impulsive decisions based on short-term feelings. Our seventh lesson was the view from above, a Stoic exercise that encourages us to see the bigger picture. When deciding on second chances, this perspective can help us to weigh up the overall impact of our decision, not just the immediate effects. In our eighth lesson, we discussed the dichotomy of control. Stoicism teaches us to focus our energy on what we can control and let go of what we can't. When it comes to second chances, it reminds us that while we can control our own actions and decisions, we can't control the actions of others. Finally, we delved into the discipline of assent, the idea of consciously agreeing to our own thoughts and perceptions. This lesson prompts us to critically examine our thoughts when deciding whether to give a second chance, to ensure that our decision is based on reasoned judgment, not on unchecked assumptions or biases. Stoicism, with its emphasis on acceptance, virtue, and reason, offers a unique perspective on the concept of second chances. It reminds us to be mindful, considerate, and wise in our decisions. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Stoicism and second chances.